Wow, you blew his brains out. Good shot. You got his head.
Show them who's boss, all right? Incredible! You beat them! Kill them and ensure victory! Take care of this.
Time's up!
All right, the time's come. Don't let me down.
Scotland forever! How's your cough in your mouth? Is it good? How's your cough in your mouth, please? Aye, me bottle of scrumpy. Fruit! 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 Aye, me bottle of scrumpy. Fruit!
If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. And
Synonym.
are all words. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, if you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters... If you ask an English teacher marking an essay, then counting words is simple. It is the number that comes up when you hit the word count button in whichever program you're writing with. For English at least, word counting algorithms generally count a word as any string of letter characters. Each string of those separated by some other character. It's a word. The trouble is, while that might be good enough for checking that an essay is roughly the length you want it to be, it's going to count plenty of things that aren't words too. And it doesn't get to a more fundamental question. What actually is a word? Well, first of all, there's the problem of meaning. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knop it, and are all words, despite being pretty much meaningless. You certainly can't rely on dictionaries to define what's a real word either. There are plenty of words that people use rough characters, the word count button in whichever program you're writing with. For English at least, word counting algorithms generally count a word as any string of letter characters. Each string of those separated by some other character, it's a word. The trouble is, while that might be good enough for checking that an essay is roughly the length you want it to be, it's going to count plenty of things that aren't words too. And it doesn't get to a more fundamental question. What actually is a word? Well, first of all, there's the problem of meaning. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knoppet and are all words, despite being pretty much meaningless. You certainly can't rely on dictionaries to define what's a real. If you accept the definition that a word is some letters surrounded by a gap, then knoppet and
Synonym
are all words, despite being pretty much meaningless.
The first ever recipe I remember making as a kid was a lemon meringue pie. It's a fairly advanced recipe for a 7-year-old given the meringue, which can be difficult to master. Underwhip and it's a gooey pool of egg whites. Overwhip and it becomes too firm and dries out. Yet somehow I nailed it on the first try. Flash forward to today where I'm 25 years old and making cooking videos for a living. And this morning I woke up and thought of the pie that started it all. And asked myself a simple but weird question. Could I make that lemon meringue pie transparent? We're about to find out, but before that I want to remind you to toss a like on the video. Seriously, do it. And give a great big thanks to Emergency for sponsoring this video. To start, I did some quick research, and it quickly became obvious that I needed to use gelatin in the final recipe. Then I scanned through several pictures for inspiration. I even got a real lemon meringue pie to remind myself exactly what they taste like. If I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do it right. To start, I gotta taste the pie. A lemon meringue pie is made up of 3 parts. That beautiful buttery crust on the bottom, that silky acidic lemony filling in the middle, and last but not least, that beautiful toasted meringue on top. Let's try. From that flavor, it's clear that my transparent pie has to have all that balance. The crust needs to be flaky and buttery, the meringue light and fluffy, and the filling rich, lemony, and creamy. Let's start on the crust. For our pie crust, 2.5 cups all-purpose flour, a little pinch of salt, and a half tablespoon of sugar. Pulse this up. Oh, not plugged in. Pulse this up. Now adding in a few cubes at a time, we'll toss in 2 whole sticks of butter, continuing to pulse on and off. Now last but not least, we'll drizzle in little bits of cold water, continuing to add water and pulse until pea-sized clumps form. Then shape it into a ball and let it rest in the fridge. While the dough rests in the fridge for a short bit, I'll take the time to juice a few lemons and oranges while I tell you about today's sponsor, Emergency. Emergency products contain a potent blend of nutrients to support your immune system and help you emerge your best every day. And personally, it's always been my go-to for supporting my own immune system. Emergency Immune Plus has an enhanced immune support formula, which is packed with key ingredients your body needs, such as vitamin D, zinc, and vitamin C. Let's crack it open. Each packet contains 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C, which is more vitamin C than 10 oranges. To lay this out visually, that's this one packet here compared to all these oranges. I'm gonna give you a quick moment to let that sink in with some beautiful orange squeezing B-roll. I figured juicing oranges here would be quite fitting, especially considering my favorite flavor is super orange. Lastly, Emergency is gluten-free, vegetarian, and contains no artificial flavors. Not to mention it helps to support my busy lifestyle and can be easily incorporated into my daily wellness routine. Go buy some now with the link in the description below. And with all that said, let's get back to this pie. Once our dough has rested, it's time to roll it out. Unfortunately, Manny lost our rolling pin. In fact, I'm quite confident he stole it entirely. So I'm using his water bottle to roll out the crust. Once your dough's rolled out, roll it up over your pin or water bottle, then give it a light brush. In fact, I'm quite pie. Once our dough Unfortunately, Manny lost our rolling pin. In fact, I'm quite confident he stole it entirely. So I'm using his water bottle to roll out the crust. Once your dough's rolled out, roll it up over your pin or water bottle, then give it a light brushing of brown butter, the easiest way to elevate any baked good you make. Then lay that pie crust all the way across. At this point, we want to go all the way around the pie and really let that pie crust wedge against the edges of our pan. Be gentle with it and just take your time. Then trim around the edges, leaving just a little bit of space up top to make a nice pattern. Now go all the way around your pie, pinching up on the edges and pushing in on the sides, just to start to get that really nice pattern. Once our crust is perfect, we'll prick it all over the bottom with a fork to make sure it doesn't puff up. Then we'll toss in a piece of parchment paper along with some sugar to weigh it down. We'll bake this at 425 Fahrenheit for about 10 to 15 minutes until it's golden brown and beautiful. Now for the exciting part, our pie filling. First, I'll go in with about 5 cups of cool water. This right here is gelatin. You might often see it in a packet like this instead, in the powder form. But these gelatin sheets here will make a much clearer final version for our lemon meringue pie. I mean, you can literally see my eyes through these sheets. The first thing we need to do with our gelatin is bloom it. So sheet by sheet, I'll toss it into the cold water and we'll let it bathe in there for about 10 minutes to hydrate. Moments later, our gelatin sheets look like this. They're even more see-through, silky smooth, and pretty jelly-like at this point. They've also become extremely flexible. Oops. At this point, over what's called a double boiler, we're gonna slowly stir to dissolve them. As this process happens, I'll be adding in different things to start to get that lemon meringue pie flavor. The key is gonna be utilizing real ingredients, such as lemons or these big plump oranges, while also keeping that nice crystal clear color. Citric acid is what you find on all your favorite sour candy, and when you put it on your tongue, And you try it.
Oh, wow. Oh,
Adding in a touch of citric acid is what's gonna give us that sour tart pop without adding too much lemon juice, which will cloud everything up. At this point, I'll take a dropper and take just a little bit of that orange and lemon mixture, circling around evenly and keeping an eye to make sure it doesn't get too cloudy. This part is all about trial and error. Next, I have just a touch of lemon extract, and I won't be adding all that much given how powerful it is. Now, I'll continue mixing. And at this point, you can see no gelatin sheets remain. I'll take a quick taste. Add in just a tiny pinch of sugar, a teeny bit more citric acid, and a little bit of butter extract to get that creaminess that I get in a lemon meringue pie. Now we can pour this into our tart. Once our tart is finally done, we'll gently remove the sugar weight to reveal a nice buttery crust. At this point, you can see our liquid has cleared up, and I'll go straight into that pie crust. Immediately, I'll toss this in the fridge and let it set for about 6 to 8 hours. While we wait, we'll make our meringue. Very simply, we want to separate out a bunch of egg whites, making absolutely sure to get nothing but the egg white in the bowl. Meringues can be hard, but they can also be very simple if you're diligent about how you make them. Now for our meringue, we'll put in those 5 egg whites, followed by just a pinch of cream of tartar, which will help to stabilize the meringue, and mix. Once nice stiff peaks have formed, our meringue is set. That right there is a thing of beauty. Something about it is just gorgeous to me. And 6 hours later, our meringue pie is done. I know it doesn't look like much, but it turned out really well so far. The one real issue I can see is that it looks to have gotten a little bit soggy throughout the crust, and I don't really know how to combat that. I mean, we cooked our crust fully, but because there's so much water and liquid in this filling, it might just be one of those things that's impossible to avoid. I just hope that it holds together when we go to cut it and take it out. But before that, let's look at some B-roll jiggling. Steaks can come in all shapes and sizes. Beef can be so expensive, in fact, that whole cows often sell for over $30,000. I don't even think cameraman Manny is worth $30,000.
hey,
That's why today, I want to see what the differences are between a Manny is worth $30,000.
hey.
That's why today, I want to see what the differences are between a $1 steak and a $350 steak. And yes, you heard me right. I actually went out and bought a single steak that cost me $350 just for this video. And I do stuff like that all the time, so go down and smack that subscribe button before you forget. Also, don't forget to toss a like on the video. But first, do we have any idea what those differences might be? Well, aside from the fact that one is from Japan and one probably from somewhere in the US, we know they'll probably come from different sections of the cow. Allow me to demonstrate on Manny. The middle section of the cow is where... of the cow. Allow me to demonstrate on Manny. The middle section of the cow is where... The middle section of the cow is where all that best marbled meat is. Alright, get off the table. Move. So that means our dollar cow is where all that best marbled meat is. Alright, get off the table. Move. So that means our dollar Tree steak will likely come from elsewhere, probably around the hind legs of the cow where all that muscle is and the meat is tougher. And of course, there are many other factors. Think diet, where in the world it comes from, the actual supply. For instance, there's only 2 briskets in an entire cow. So we have to think about a little bit of everything here. Now, my steak from Japan is already here and I have an entire info packet with all this information about the meat, given how expensive it is. This is information to validate the fact that this meat is what it says it is. And this right here is a Kobe ribeye. It's essentially the best of the best when it comes to Wagyu. But since we already have our $350 steak, let's head to the dollar store and grab our $1 steak. We are now pulling up, and as you can see off to my left, we have Family Dollar, where we're gonna be getting our steak today. I didn't even think steak could cost $1 or less for that matter, but this apparently does. Manny, your car's here. So our big priority right now is obviously to find... Manny, your car's here. So our big priority right now is obviously to find that $1 steak, and I don't know where it is. So apparently this is the only steak that we've got right now, and it's $1.60 for this Salisbury steak. But we're now also gonna head to Dollar Tree because they said they might actually have better steaks there, and we're looking for the best $1 steak we can get. Thank you so much. As we're leaving Family Dollar, I just want to say that those were probably, wouldn't you agree, Manny, some of the nicest store employees I've ever met?
100%. They're so nice.
All of them came to help us find the cheapest steak in there. Just a swarm of them around us. Every worker in the store was helping us, right?
Yeah.
I love that. But they suggested we actually go to their competitor, Dollar Tree, because apparently they actually have a $1 steak that's supposedly a little bit better. So let's go. Tree had a really solid $1 steak. I feel like we're in luck here, Manny. Okay, so we're coming back with this steak. This is less than $1. And I think the coolest part is that it still has the bone in, which has that extra flavor. So who knows, maybe this has an upper hand on that Wagyu. You wanna be on the video?
You're in the video.
Sure.
Hell yeah. Guess what we're doing today? We're cooking a $1 steak, and then we're cooking a $300 steak.
Oh, nice.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, that's
So
very
you'll
cool.
see the video, and then you'll be in it.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I can't believe this. I was like, I know him. I saw him somewhere. I'm like, where did I saw him?
Now you know what we're doing. Which steak do you think is gonna win?
I think Dollar Tree one's gonna win.
Yeah?
The $1
Alright.
one.
I love it. Thank you. Let me just tell you, you enter Dollar Tree with a couple of bucks, you are a king in there. Not only did I get a steak that actually looks kind of solid, I got this. It's a lollipop with a face on it. I guess my point is we might be doing videos at Dollar Tree more often because I am telling you right now, you go into that place and you're a king. I mean, it's the best thing ever. And everybody in there is so incredibly nice. I used to shop there as a kid non-stop, and I haven't for a while, but this is fantastic. And I've had a reawakening. By the way, we've already got 1 vote for the $1 steak winning over the $350 Wagyu from Japan. And we have no votes right now. Today I'll be making Gordon Ramsay's famous beef Wellington while blindfolded. Let me be clear, this is not a challenge. I would never challenge Gordon. He's had over 20 Michelin stars across his lifetime with restaurants all over the world, and I think we all know how intense he is. I mean, we've all seen the idiot sandwich meme, and I think we're all still looking for the lamb sauce.
Where's the lamb sauce?
He really did also teach me quite a lot on MasterChef, and I know he looks in but the reality is that he really did also teach me quite a lot on MasterChef. And I know he looks intense, but the reality is that he's one of the sweetest guys you'll ever meet. So Gordon, if you're watching this, it's not a challenge. Here's the deal. I, along with many others, think of beef Wellington as one of the hardest dishes in the world to master. Beef Wellington has always been a home cook's worst nightmare. And just by looking at it, you can understand why. You've got that beautiful golden brown crust on the outside, a bunch of layers in between, and then somehow a perfectly cooked piece of meat in the middle.
Oh my god. The duck's burned! You're cooking in a burnt pan, you fucking dick! Oh my god, leave it, leave it, leave it! Just fucking leave it! You're gonna blow fire in your face, you fucking donkey!
He brings that pissing over, and the big surprise is the fucking bass is fucking raw! What the fuck is going on?
Where's the lamb sauce?
What the big surprise is the fucking bass is fucking raw! What the fuck is going on?
Where's the lamb sauce?
Come on, man.
I just need
This is the lamb.
Where's the lamb sauce?
man.
I just need a...
This is the lamb.
Where's the lamb sauce?
Right here, chef.
Where's the lamb sauce?
Right here, chef. Here, chef.
Wake up!
Yes, chef.
Wake up!
Yes, chef.
Cook the spinach to order, you lazy cow! Hurry up!
Yes.
Fuck off!
Watch my stuff, please.
Get in there! What's wrong with you?
Nothing, chef.
Look at me, hey, look, you ignorant bitch. Look at my fucking eyes when I'm talking to you.
Chef.
What's wrong with you?
I'm trying to work, chef. I'm trying
Yeah.
to communicate.
Wake up!
Yes, chef.
You! What's wrong with you?
Nothing, chef.
Yeah, get a grip!
got it.
Hey, hello, come here, donkeys. Here we go. Come here. What is that?
It's all right.
What is that? What is that? What is that? Fuck off, will you? Fuck off. Okay? Useless fucking pieces of shit. Raw! 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 Shit! Fucking shit!
We fired 2 salmon.
Useless fucking pieces of shit. Raw! 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 Shit! Fucking shit!
We fired 2 salmon, 1 tagliatelle.
Fine dining! A fine fucking mess! Madam! A madam! Madam!
Yes, chef.
Take your jacket off and fuck off!
Chef, don't say that, please.
Take mess! Madam!
1 tagliatelle.
Fine dining! A fine fucking mess! Madam! A madam! Madam!
Yes, chef.
Take your jacket off and fuck off!
Chef, don't say that, please.
kill them and ensure victory. Wow, you blew his brains out. Nice! Wow, you blew his brains out. Nice! Very good shooting. Very good shooting. Good shot, mate. You got his head. Finish them quickly. Haha, good. He loses his level. Хорошо, you got him. Good shot. You got his head. Nice headshot. Kill them all. Make them suffer. Wow, you blew his brains out. Nice. Good shot. You got his head. Хорошо, you got him.
Time's up! Time's up!
So this is Half-Life Google Translate. This is what happens if you run all the text in Half-Life through Google Translate. So we're just gonna, it's a new game. I read the story and wished to push the button. Sure did.
Hi. Welcome
Hello.
to Black.
I read the story and wished to push the.
Welcome
Hello.
to Black Mesa.
Okay,
In
how
the
long do you
call
think
to
this is
ensure
gonna
the
take
safety and
before it
comfort
becomes
of Black Mesa
complete
Research Center.
gibberish?
The very personal in his hand.
Oh, there we go. There we go. Didn't take long.
In an emergency, passengers must remain seated and wait for further instructions.
Wow, that made
It is
sense.
convenient to get off the bus. You must first remove the disabled.
What the
Off the
fuck?
train, get off the bus. You must first remove the disabled.
What the
Off the
fuck?
convenient to get off the bus. You must first remove the disabled.
Wow, that made
It is
sense.
convenient to get off the bus. You must first remove the disabled.
What the
Off the
fuck?
train and go to the emergency station until you get off.
Okay, the tram is in eugenics. I don't support that message.
Avoid having someone
Time's
to
up.
make a significant contribution to the friend or family member in Niger. Somoza was
she
the
get
purpose
Niger?
of suffering.
What?
This immediately
Even
takes
she
up
was
space
confused
for
by
the
that
sensitive and
sentence.
peer relations.
Even the voice
more
actor's
information,
having trouble
see
comprehending
Black
this shit.
Stand at the door, I beg you, and wait for the security officer to identify
Please,
the investigation.
please stand by the
like
door. I beg of you,
Turn your cheek to the
please.
truth. Lauren Day, safe and productive.
If you're not gonna kill the cripple, at least stand by the door.
Hello, the Cicero. Looks like they are slow.
Okay. I'm not Gordon, I'm Cicero. Not quite sure why, but alright.
Hello, Mr. Freeman.
Greetings.
I had a lot of messages for you. But about 20 minutes ago, there was a system crash, and they were always trying to find my files.
This isn't as bad as I thought
I
it'd
think
be.
the security system is still
I was
limited.
expecting far more gibberish.
If you can do it now, I can do it.
Yeah, okay.
You think I think?
Okay, the scientist small talk hasn't fared quite as well as
Hello and welcome to a video where I show you interesting and funny things that I've learned about Half-Life 2 in the nearly 3,000 hours that I've played the game. At the start of Root Canal, there is a trigger volume that will push you onto the platform next to it, to keep you from being crushed between the wall and the train cars. You can only take advantage of this once, though. Here's what happens if you try it again. There's a combined soldier above this spot in Root Canal. Because the gravity gun and the airboat were never going to be in the game at the same time, Valve never considered what might happen when they interact. If you're quick enough, you can press E after punting and fly around in the airboat. It's possible to see these manhacks in an undeployed state. You simply have to kill this cop before he finishes pushing this button. They do activate if you disturb them in any way. Sometimes, shooting something will move it towards you instead of away. Sometimes, shooting something will move it towards you instead of away. The scene where you get the RPG has some odd things going on. When entering the room, you can see Odessa quickly moving his arms. The RPG Odessa holds isn't the actual one, it's just a generic model. The real one is spawned in when you're close enough to him. It doesn't simply give you the RPG though, it actually spawns it on the floor. If you're a very specific distance away from Odessa, you can avoid being in the RPG's pickup radius, so you can see it on the floor.
Colonel Odessa Cubbage at your service.
Citizens can grab guns out of your hands, just like they would grab one from the ground. If you left-click to try to throw the gun, the game will crash. You can also trick them into dropping their gun if you move the other one away at the right time.
Fantastic.
These guys will gladly die for you. Many weapons have weird quirks when you hold down right-click.
Having you here to fight alongside us is going to make a big difference for morale.
This level is supposed to be harder.
Crap. Here come the dropships.
Dropships have a gun here, which is supposed to turn. Since it doesn't turn, it will only fire when you're directly in its path. The gun was broken in an update to the game sometime between 2007 and 2010.
Dropship at the lighthouse.
It's possible to die here from the garage door crushing the car.
Hey, over here. Made it. We're picking up radio chatter.
If you load directly into the first level of Follow Freeman, your RPG will have no ammo. This is to keep you from easily killing the snipers. Loading into the level before gives you no RPG, and loading into the level after gives you a regular one. Many items in the game will change based on what you need most. You can shoot enemy grenades, but not your own. Valve knew that this scene with the crane could break if something was put on top of the buggy. If you try to block the crane with something breakable, it will just break it. If you use something not breakable, it will just straight up remove it. AR2 energy balls will stick to crane magnets. Grenades may stick or go through the magnet. If you stand on a head crab and punt it to death, you will die of fall damage. This is because standing on a moving thing makes you move with it. If you set it up right, you can do this sideways. Being sideways. If you set it up right, you can do this sideways. Being bit by a poison head crab temporarily takes you down to 1 health. If you're bit while at full health, this attack deals 99 damage and pushes you back quite a ways. This is odd because any source of damage can be configured to not push you. For example, damage from fire doesn't push you. Most guns can be reloaded faster by first looking at a friendly NPC or going into any cutscene that automatically lowers your weapon. The gun will move up before reloading, and the game thinks this moving up animation is the reload animation. The actual reload animation will play after this, but you can fire during it. When stuff goes near these holes, they move weird. You can also break open these holes before the roller mines spawn. They have 10,000 health, so it takes a long time. These batteries will respawn if you throw them away. This one, though, doesn't come back. On this specific level, crossbow shots can go through Alex.
Kill them and ensure victory.
This is to keep her from blocking your shots, since she's close to you for most of the level. Weapons and item pickups can freeze crossbow bolts. This bolt is still live. For reference, here's a dead one.
Nice headshot. Very good shooting.
If you move whatever it got stuck on, it'll continue like nothing happened.
Wow, you blew his brains out. Nice.
If you hit a wall hard enough, there's a small impact sound. The sound is supposed to change based on what type of surface you hit. Bricks, wood, grass, you know. The sound can be incorrect though if the wall you hit and the last surface you stepped on are different kinds. For example, here I step on a fence and then hit a brick wall. This bug is so obscure that it managed to get into most Source Engine games. Here's me doing it in CSGO. Today's VACT video is a little different.
Them quickly.
I'll be sharing everything I know about an NPC simply called Blob. The Blob NPC was featured in a sort of interactive tech demo at an event called Valve Hardware Day in 2006. This tech demo showed off some particle effects,
Haha, good. He loses his level.
the more popular NPC Surface, whose visual code would later be used for the gel in Portal 2, and NPC Blob, which appears more as a swarm of insects. In the demo, we can see NPC Blob climbing over obstacles, avoiding hazards, forming into a coherent shape, and attacking an enemy. And that's it. That's all the official content for this NPC. But what we weren't supposed to see is actually more interesting. Every Source Engine game comes with at least one text file that has information about every object in the game. This file is used by the level editor to show level designers what they can place in a map. One of the most common things to place in a level are nodes, little markers that tell NPCs about the world around them. Nodes are how an NPC knows how to get somewhere. They can also give NPCs additional context about a level, for example, where to hide from a sniper. In the game data files for Alien Swarm and CSGO, the node object has context options related to the blob. These options imply that the blob originally would have been able to shake, spit, regenerate, and have a brain. These options also have the word F3 before them.
Very
I know
good.
people always
One less
make
level
weird
for him.
speculations about this stuff, but I don't know how you can draw a conclusion from this, which isn't that the blob was going to be in Half-Life 2 Episode 3. We know all that, but there's still a lot to say about the blob's appearance and behavior. What the blob appears as is a group of models, but I think if it was finished, it would look more like NPC surface. Using the gel in Portal 2, I made what I think it would look like. The actual appearance of the blob is controlled by a console variable. I've changed it in some of my footage, so sometimes the blob will look different. I won't show any footage from episode 1 or 2, because this NPC actually isn't in them, which is weird because with basically every other thing, if it's in Half-Life 2, it's in the episodes. The blob is classified as a player ally, so it attacks wildlife and Combine NPCs. The blob attacks enemies by surrounding them and then, I guess, consuming them. Combine soldiers are especially programmed to take 3 seconds to die. Most other enemies die extremely fast because the blob deals 5 points of damage every 0.025 seconds. Try as they might, enemies can't actually hurt the blob, and even if they could, it has over 2 billion health. I have no idea what these antlions are doing. Using console commands,
Kill them
we
all.
can see what
Make them
happens when
suffer.
a blob does die. Using console commands, we can see we can see what happens when a blob does die. Wow. The only things that can survive a blob attack are things that can't actually be hurt by most things, such as roller mines. Blobs do have one weakness: indoor spaces. Blobs can climb over walls, but give them a ceiling or a tight corridor and they go completely haywire. Blobs also don't really understand when part of them is stuck. When parts of a blob get separated, it can't accurately judge where its center is. When this center point is wrong, the NPC doesn't know when it's actually at an enemy, so it may never begin to attack it. The bed this woman sits on has an invisible barrier around it, which is internally named "You Suck." It only blocks NPCs. I don't know what this is supposed to do. If you delete it, nothing bad happens. Half-Life 2 physics are obviously not perfectly accurate to a game, but there are some cases where Valve straight up cheated physics in ways for various reasons. I will show many examples. When vehicles are stuck upside down, they're programmed to flip over. Ironically, in the cutscene at the start of Highway 17, the buggy is forced to flip upside down. Even though the buggy is clearly upright, I still have to exit and re-enter the vehicle for it to begin working. crane magnets are configured to swing less than normal. These doors don't actually fall like this. Doors don't actually fall like this. The way the train sends you into the air is obviously fake. Many times in the game, an NPC's dead body is pushed a certain way for various reasons. Most of the time it's just to look cool. Sometimes in Half-Life 2, things will only activate if you're looking in a certain place. The cops near this dumpster will not spawn as long as you don't look at the place that they come from. This cop won't start to push this barrel until you start looking at a spot near him. You can even look directly at the cop and he'll never do anything, and the barrel will never light on fire. If you don't look at this guy, he won't give you his 2 crates.
Look out below!
On this level, if you take a specific path and avoid looking at G-Man, you can see him up close. The same is true on this level. Some zombies don't get up off the floor until you look at them. This one is particularly amusing. When you look at this stove, an antlion will crash through the wall behind it, causing a fire in the kitchen. If you don't look at this stove, none of that will happen. It will also cause 2 turrets to not spawn. If you look outside this window, there will be a completely random explosion. If you kill the snipers trapping Barney without looking at him, you can make him say his lines out of order.
Gordon, take out these snipers, would you? All right, thanks, Gordon. Now let's clear out of here. Gordon, I can't move. These snipers got me pinned down. Come on, Gordon. Gordon, lob a couple grenades. That'll clear them out. Hey, let us out! He's here! Let us out. We'll throw in with you.
When an antlion can't find a way to get to you, it will burrow into the ground. Funny enough, it'll do this even if the ground is something artificial. You might be wondering why this antlion doesn't just jump up. As I said in a previous fact video, NPCs need node markers to know where to go. Since there are no nodes on this roof, they don't know what to do. Burning citizens will become charred, just like zombies do. Unlike zombies, they don't seem to really care about it.
No! 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 No!
Are we gonna get going soon?
No! 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 No!
One of my favorite Half-Life 2 bugs is this. Zombie torsos, much like their parents, will look at you the entire time that they move around, even if that means walking backwards. The problem is that torsos don't have a backwards walking animation, only a forward one. Many weird effects can happen when you load directly into a level and then try to go to the level before that. Basically, the game will act as if you were never there, because technically you weren't. By going back to the start of Highway 17, you can duplicate the buggy. The same thing happens with the airboat, but it's impossible to reach it. As I said in another fact video, you have to exit and re-enter the buggy before it begins working. This effect applies the moment the map starts, and you can only get rid of it with the buggy that's on the dock. Levels at the start of a chapter will put up invisible walls so that you can't go back. After the current one, and then going all the way back through that. After the current one, and then going all the way back through that. Here it's possible to get 7 rebels in the same place, but only 4 will follow you.
Collaboration as if such a term were ashamed. I ask you, what greater exists than that of collaboration? In our current unparalleled age, the lungfish refused to breathe air. It crept forth boldly while its brethren remained in the blackest ocean abyss, with lidless eyes forever staring at the dark. Ignorant and doomed despite their eternal vigilance. Would we model ourselves on the...
Well, Gordon Freeman. And about time, too.
When an NPC with an SMG dies, the amount of ammo left in their gun depends on how many shots it would take to kill them. This means that NPCs with larger health pools will give more ammo. Since your difficulty setting affects damage amounts, SMGs will have less ammo on easy and more ammo on hard. If you gain health after dying, you enter a sort of half-dead state. Your view goes back into the air instead of being on the ground. If you hold down a movement key at the moment that you get the health, you can then move around. Once you're not pressing any movement keys, the next time the game will reload. The player's physics are somewhat different when dead than when you're alive. When walking around while half dead, you can start to fly. You can get into this state by dying as a medic gives you a health kit, or by getting hit by a poison head crab and dying before the poison heals. Hit by a poison head crab and dying before the poison heals. Half-Life 2 has a few weird controls. Keyboard look modifier does nothing except disable forward and backward movement. If you set seal mouse look 1, forward and backward will make you look up and down. Strafe modifier makes you move by moving your mouse. There are commands for swimming up and down. You get the same amount of speed from this as when pressing forward when looking up or down. All of these commands were originally in Quake, when the FPS genre was just becoming a thing, and gamers were more used to using a keyboard than a mouse. Even if an enemy can see you, they won't shoot until you can get a fair shot on them. As you know, this crow flies directly into a barnacle. But if you kill the barnacle before it hits, the crow will fly on to freedom. However, if something hits the barnacle before the crow does, the crow becomes jealous. NPCs that die on these stairs will fall into the ground. When you launch an explosive object from the gravity gun, it will always explode on whatever it touches, even if that doesn't make much sense. In Half-Life 1, there are many things that move along predefined paths. Some of these things can be controlled by Gordon. Many of these things also exist in Half-Life 2, but this is the only controllable one that I know of. There's a random guy walking around in this menu background.
Well, Gordon Freeman. And about time, too. Well, Well, Gordon Freeman. And about time, too.
He's not there in the actual map. In the Citadel, there are some pods that you're not supposed to be able to go on, but can. Some pods that you're not supposed to be able to go on, but can. If you find a mute, shoot this barrel before going up the stairs. All the birds near it will die, which I find amusing. The horse statue at the end of Follow Freeman has a dick and balls. Not gonna show it in a YouTube video, but it's a solid 1 out of 10. In a previous fact video, I showed that loading into a specific level would cause your RPG to have no ammo. There are some other levels that have odd things happen when you load directly into them. On one level of Water Hazard, you're spawned inside the hazardous water. Since there's a small delay before you gain control of Gordon, you will always lose at least 7 health. When loading directly into a map, the game gives you a bunch of items and you usually immediately pick them up. However, on some maps this doesn't always work out and you can miss picking up items. If you load directly into the map that's under the bridge in Highway 17, you'll have no weapons and you'll be on the far side. If you load into either of the two maps directly after getting the supercharged gravity gun, you'll have regular weapons. Zombies will drop their grenade if you shoot them in the arm. In this part of Water Hazard, it's possible to shoot this barrel from the wrong place. This trick is used to save time in the speedrun category. Old Engine Scriptless.
Так, посмотрев, я понимаю, что там, ну, не особо много всяких фишечек.
Something most people don't know about this though is that you don't have to shoot the barrel. You can actually just break the wood structure itself. This top piece has 30 health, but the rest of it only has 10 health. I don't think this would actually help in the speedrun though. It's possible to get below this bridge directly from above.
Major fracture detected. Automatic medical systems engaged. Ammunition depleted.
Valve did realize it was possible to do the opposite, going from the below map to the above map. They tried to prevent this by putting an invisible wall in your way.
Medical systems engaged. Morphine administered. Minor fracture detected. Warning. Vital signs critical. Seek medical attention.
Using cheats, you can turn things into other things. First, look at the thing that you want to change. Then in the console type ENT_fire, exclamation mark, picker, add output, quote marks, class name, and then the name of the thing that you want to change it to. Now, save and reload the game. With the command I've done, this NPC will now act like Alex.
Sorry, Gordon. Watch out!
This can break the game a lot.
Welcome to City 17. You have chosen or been chosen to relocate to one of our finest remaining urban centers. I thought so much of the city.
God, you have...
Attention Nova Prospect Internal Containment Team. These service all political conscripts in Block A7.
Be sure to like the video and subscribe to my channel. It costs you everything and I wish you all the worst. Also, I'm running low on fact videos, So if you have any facts that you want me to see, put them in the comments.